come forward and open. There's a recording taking place. I'm just going to ask if you folks wouldn't mind moving forward. I'm going to move you forward to the panelists. Please don't panic about that. We can sit in a circle. It's not a massive group. So I'd really like you to move.
Paul. So sorry for being late. We were just trying to get the projector here, but I am here.
Fine, excellent. Could you open a camera sometime? And if I could ask other people to open cameras. I'm just moving everybody through to the panelists. We're generally a smaller group than what I expected. So let's rather all just sit around the table and open your cameras and let's be human, as we've heard. Let's not be robots in the process. So I'm going to be moving people forward. And if you wouldn't mind opening your cameras so we can just see who you are and we can engage. I really like that theme today about AI and starting to be human. Hello, Shivli. Okay. I'm going to, there we go. Thank you very much. We've got some people coming on board. That's great.
If it's possible to put them on the screen as well. So just in case they present and they would like to. Yes. Yes, I do. How would you like me to send it to you?
Is it a link? Can we type it manually?
Let's see. This is the link.
Sorry, hi, you can hear me, right? It's start ready. I'm just checking to see if
we can hear you.
Yes, we
and
can.
we can nearly see you. We nearly saw you.
Yeah, I'm trying. Okay. Is that better? No? Yes. I can't see myself.
Camera's not on. There we go. There we go. Excellent.
And then tell me, sorry, how do I share the presentation?
There's a button that says, if you open the PowerPoint first, so you open your PowerPoint presentation on your computer, and then there's a button that says share. And when you open that window, you'll go to the window that you want to share. It is much easier sharing your own presentations and talking through your own presentations than telling me, Paul, please page on to the next one. And I can also then gain some knowledge by listening to your presentation. So if you can share your own, it's really great from that side.
Do you mind if I try? I almost never use Zoom.
Yes,
always on Teams.
Do.
If you don't mind, I just want to kind of share and then put it onto. Sorry, I really never ever use Zoom. So I'm
you can put my email, but it will just take it to this laptop, no?
It should be opening up soon now, and it will then be visible to us. It's just starting.
Can you see mine?
There we go. It's ready to roll.
Okay, I just want to see if I can move right up.
Yeah, there we go. That's right. Moving all those thousands of slides that you're going to kill us by death by PowerPoint with.
Thousands. I actually tried.
They're 5. They're only 5. Don't panic. They're only 5.
Yeah, I deliberately try to keep it as little as possible. Okay.
That's great.
Now
so you can stop sharing. There we go. And we're back to there.
I'm good. All right.
The other folks that are there, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to move you up to panelists as well, just so we can have a discussion. And then Bella can coordinate bringing you in. And I'm not bringing you in at opening the door and closing the doors on you. So you'll be getting a message to say you want to move to be a panelist. Please join us as panelists. It really is nice that we sit around the table rather than in an auditorium setup. And then please put your cameras on if you can. Doesn't take a lot of bandwidth. I know we always say that that's a possibility. It doesn't, but it really does help that we can engage and see people. And we can be human. I'm going to use that term because I heard it today in one of the presentations. Let's be human. Let's not be AI in that process. There are a few people have declined to be panelists. That's okay as well. I'm not going to stress about that. But if you wouldn't mind, those of you that are coming through, maybe just open your cameras, even if it's for a short while, just to say, how's it, so we know who you are, and then we can take it through on that side there. And then, Bella, I'm going to hand over to you to run with it. This office of mine looks a bit techno-frightening at the moment, and I need to scramble and see what I need to do. And if you can just lead through the process.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Just before you step out, we are struggling with the link. We're trying to put the presentations on a projector and we're just linking it to another email. And the link you sent us is a little, we're struggling a little bit with it. Is it possible for me to just project from my computer?
No, since we've moved all slides in here.
So some of them have the ability to just present from where they are, and just share. So we're gonna project from my laptop, sorry. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. I think we should be fine.
That's great.
Cool. All right. Good day, everyone. Apologies for the rush. My name is Bella, and I will be the moderator for this panel. If you could just give me a few minutes, we're just trying to set up the tech so that the people also in the room can then hear your presentations as well. But while we're still doing that, let me just check who is in the room. So, Josh, I see that you're here. I can see. Rosanna is in the room, but she tells me that she is not presenting, but instead her co-authors are presenting. Are they in the room? Collins, anyone?
Sorry, Bella, can I just ask? I'm only presenting
Yes.
later on this afternoon. Can I leave the call and come back later on? I'm not in this panel.
Oh yeah, sure. If you're not in
Sorry,
this
that
panel,
wasn't clear.
it's perfectly
Okay,
fine.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Not too sure why the sound is not projecting.
What the sound as well?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Hi, Bella. It's Jeannie here. Can I just ask?
Jean.
I thought I was on now. Am I in the right panel?
Is this, you're supposed to be, this is room 3, breakout room 3. Is that the panel you are under?
I was the speaker, and I was supposed to have been speaking 10 minutes ago. So this is the link that's been sent to me.
Good. Jenny,
That's okay, then you
is
probably are in the right place.
it Jenny Reed?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to send you another link. Just give me a sec. And if you wouldn't go into that one, you're supposed to be with Neil in the other
Okay,
one.
sorry,
Not
this
you-
is the
not-
one.
Not you're supposed to be, but yeah, I'll get you across there.
Okay, I'll leave this one.
Yeah, and I'll send you a link right away.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Jenna, for asking, and I'm glad you're sorted in that regard. Josh, you are here. Collins, are you here? No? Namdi, are you here? No. Trevor? Yeah. Trevor, you here? No. Okay. Francis? Yeah. Okay. And then the panelists who are in the room, please just indicate to me who you are, just an introduction, and then quickly just tell me what your name of your paper is. So just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay, can I go first?
Yes, please, Josh, go ahead.
Good morning. It's morning here in Nigeria. So, Josh
Morning.
ABC. Yeah, I'm Josh ABC. I'm presenting later. My topic is decolonizing HR strategy using two African epistemologies and philosophies. So I think
Cool.
that's in about an hour. But I want to
Yes.
be part of this.
You are in the right place, Josh. Thank you very much. And that is the right panel. I'm just going to ask that you please start us off. So as soon as we're done checking who's in the room, if you could be the first presenter or the
Oh, wow.
panel.
Okay,
No
that's
pressure.
good. That's fine.
Great.
That's good.
And
Thank
then
you.
Misa, would you please introduce yourself? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Sorry, Bella, are you referring to me?
Yes, I am. Sorry, am I pronouncing your name incorrectly?
No, fine. Yeah, so I'm Messia.
Messia, okay.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm just part of the audience. I mean, from
Okay.
University of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Messia. I appreciate it. We'll let you know when we start. And then, Rosanna, it seems your co-authors are not on the meeting. Sure, maybe just ask them if they got the link. There's a possibility perhaps they did not get the link. And my understanding is both of you are not presenting. No,
We're in another
the different session. Yes, correct. Okay, when you do get a hold of them, please let me know. Just to spare time, can we then have Josh, you do your presentation? You have the stage, it's all yours. Please go ahead when you're ready. And you can share by simply pressing share on for your presentation, and then you can see your screen.
Okay, all right. Thank you. My name is Joshua ABC. about DBA candidate at Lagos Business School. I also run a financial institution in Nigeria. Okay, so I took the advice of avoiding death by PowerPoint to to speak directly. I don't know if you have my topic there. If
Yes,
you
we
don't,
do. So you can
yeah,
go
so
ahead when you're ready. You're also welcome to reintroduce it if you want to.
okay, all right. Do you want me to start now?
Yes, please. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, so wow, that's a little short, but I'll try and run through. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so
Since you are the only one, I'm more than willing to give you 15, and then we'll take some questions if there are.
yay, that's good.
Perfect.
All right, all right, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so all right, so the paper is titled Decolonizing HR Strategy, Ubuntu Agbajowo, and Ethical Cross-Cultural Workforce Management in MNEs. All right, so we know that globalization has intensified the presence of multinational enterprises in emerging markets, especially, and the global south. Of course, usually they come with Western paradigms looking to exploit, in some cases, extract. The need or the thought, the whole purpose is profit maximization, shareholder satisfaction for these companies. So for them, it's imperative to drive profit maximization through human resources. And in doing that, they often import Western HRM models that privilege individualism and contractual relations. They produce, so one of the problems created is the production of a cultural mismatch and ethical tension, since you are bringing, in quotes, strange epistemologies to foist on the global south, on staff, on employees in the global south, in this case, Nigeria. And Dunford, in his 2017 paper, called it, it's a continuation of epistemic imperialism, because you foist on us a wholesale adoption of Western paradigms in human resource management without many times caring about our own ethics, our own philosophies, which are more communal and relational. So this paper argues that decolonizing HR strategy by integrating African ethical frameworks can produce a fairer, more contextually appropriate workforce practice, more relational, emphasizing ethics of care and fairness. So I'm looking at decolonizing HR strategy through two lenses or philosophies. Ubuntu, which we'll be familiar with, there's quite a lot of about Ubuntu in management, African management, in literature. And Agbajowo is a little new. It's a practice among the Yorubas. Ubuntu, for example, loosely you can say, I am because you are. It's still communal, looking at everybody as a community working together. Agbajowo is similar. He's saying that it's joint effort that produces great results, great, enduring, fairer, more contextual results. So these two philosophies or epistemologies, for example, are at variance with the individualism of Western paradigms. And we're saying, okay, even for Ubuntu, which has been written much about, has it been operationalized? Do we have empirical studies showing its full operationalization in human resource management and strategy? It is scant. Agbajowo is basically non-existent. Why Agbajowo and Ubuntu? I've looked at the two separate parts of Africa. You know, Africa is diverse. Nigeria alone has over 250 ethnic groups. But this practice of Agbajowo, practiced by about 50 million people in the southwest Nigeria, is important, it's relational, it's communal, and stresses that community ethos, community engagement. The community is a stakeholder more than the individual. And as such, everything for when you're managing HR strategy, you have to think of the people, not just the company and its attempt at profitability and all that. Same thing with Ubuntu, who says that we need to think of the community, we need to be relational, we need to think of fairness, and we need to have participation of local stakeholders and all that. So this paper addresses a couple of things. First, analyzes how relational ethics can reshape recruitment, performance management, and conflict resolution. So I will be offering a practical 3-part toolkit for multinationals operating in Africa or in the global south. First, recruitment frameworks that include relational competencies and peer-based assessments, not just curriculum vitae reviews. 2, performance systems rewarding collective outcomes and restorative appraisal, not just, oh, winner takes it all. How have you worked with others to achieve collective outcomes? 3, culturally attuned dispute resolution processes that prioritize dignity and reintegration, not just punishment, risk, and reward. So, concern really is the operationalization of African epistemologies, where across board we've had almost wholesale adoption of Euro-American strategy, even in mainstream human resource management and literature. What you have is that wholesale adoption largely prevalent in the literature. So research objectives: to develop an HR strategy grounded in Ubuntu and Yoruba Agbajowo ethics, tailored for multinational enterprises operating in the global south, especially in the global context, in the African context rather. As examples, because we know that Africa is diverse, I just say, let's have these 2 examples operationalized and take a more dominant space in African management writing and literature. 2, examine how indigenous ethical principles can enhance cross-cultural workforce management, employee engagement, and organizational legitimacy in multinational enterprises. 3, most and importantly, to contribute to HR practice and industry leadership by proposing culturally responsive policies and tools that promote ethical, inclusive, and context-sensitive HRM. Now, if you're looking at dominant HRM, human resource paradigms, of course, you have critical HRM and all those that seem to come close to addressing a couple of these things. But the issue here is, how have we been able to operationalize Ubuntu or Agbajowo African relational ethics in human resource management? Has it been established empirically in studies? That, I think, is a little scant. So my methodology, research, it's a work in progress. Research will primarily use qualitative methods for investigation. Why qualitative? Because they are effective in capturing socially constructed realities of participants. They also facilitate the critical examination of power and structural inequalities within organizational settings. This will enable me to explore deeply meanings, stories, and lived experiences of employees and managers, prioritizing detailed, contextual, rich insights, supported in a similar study by Watson in 2011. Research philosophy recommended for this study to most appropriately support the colonial HR strategy in the context of these African epistemologies is constructivism. Why? Because its inherent emphasis on local meanings aligns well with indigenous worldviews. So it may not sufficiently challenge colonial power structures, so a supplementary paradigm may be employed to deconstruct institutionalized inequalities and reconstruct systems that are indigenous logics and practices for Africans. So critical paradigm will also be employed to critique and aim to transform existing power structures, ideologies, and relations of domination. Expected outcomes, and I have a couple of minutes left. So expected outcomes, development of a decolonized HR strategy framework that integrates Ubuntu and Agbajawa philosophies with cross-cultural HRM and decolonial theory. Empirical insights into how Eurocentric human resource management paradigms manifest or are resisted or adapted with MNE's subsidiaries in the Global South, looking at Nigeria and South Africa as case studies. South Africa for Ubuntu, Nigeria for Agbajawa. Third, identification of ethical relational principles, e.g. communalism, shared responsibility, and human dignity to drive employee engagement and retention in post-colonial contexts. Also, practical recommendations from multinational enterprises to enhance cross-cultural inclusion, ethical HRM, local legitimacy, and sustainable capital development. Finally, significance and relevance of the study. I believe it will bridge a critical research gap by centering global South epistemologies and moral philosophies in HRM theorization, countering Western-centric dominance, which was emphasized by Nkomo in 2011 and Jackson in 2013. First, it also responds to the growing call for ethical and decolonial management practices that promote human dignity, equity, and sustainability. Thirdly, we will offer a framework for MNEs to localize HR strategy ethically, improving employee engagement, trust, and retention while maintaining competitiveness. First, so we're saying that, okay, adopting ethical HR does not exclude profitability for the MNEs. In fact, because of employee engagement, it should enhance it. Then advances the integration of African humanism, Ubuntu, Agbajawa, into mainstream HRM discourse, expanding global understanding of relational ethics in the workplace. Five, provides a qualitative evidence base at the conclusion of the study to guide policymakers, HR practitioners, and scholars. Do I still have more time? Okay, so basically that's it. Potential contributions to the field will be theoretical in terms of extending cross-cultural human resource management theory. It will be methodical because it will demonstrate the application of an integrated contextual methodology, which will synthesize theory, empirical evidence, and indigenous paradigms as a decolonial research practice in management studies. There will also be a practical contribution in offering a contextually embedded HRM model for MNEs that operationalizes ethical, culturally grounded management systems. It will also strengthen organizational capacity to achieve sustainable profitability through inclusive and human resource practices, which will be of benefit to all stakeholders. A practical contribution also will be providing actionable pathways for HR policy localization, enhancing the social legitimacy of multinational operations in the Global South. All right, I think I want to stop there.
All right, thank you, Josh. Really good timing there. Well done. Thank you very much. Dr. Sawan, I see you're in the room. Ready with your paper as well. Josh, please stay in the room just in case people have questions. We'll take a round of questions just as soon as we're done with all the panelists. Very interesting paper. South Africa recently had an HR Indaba last month, and there's a lot of discussion about sorts of contextualizing some of the HR practices. So I'm sure there's going to be interesting questions for your paper as well. Dr. Tawana, when you're ready. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you too. Are you going to be presenting in terms of a PowerPoint?
Yes. I'll use
All
the
right,
PowerPoint.
may I ask, yes, please. May I ask that you share your PowerPoint, please? So essentially, there's a small button that's green at the bottom of your screen. It says share, and you can use it to present your PowerPoint if it is open.
It's okay. Thank you so much. So are you now
Thank
seeing
you.
the screen?
Yes, we can see your presentation. You can start when you're ready. I'm going to give you 15 minutes and stop you when you run out of time, but go ahead.
It's okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So my topic is unveiling the key drivers for electronic banking fraud in South Africa, which is in South Africa's tech scarf financial landscape, which was actually a qualitative research. So the background of the issue is there are more and more cases of electronic banking frauds, which are actually taking place in South Africa. And despite the fact that the South African banks were or are actually so paranoid in trying to look in adopting new technologies so as to enhance some operational efficiency to also to improve customer experience and also overall to combat fraud on these digital platforms. However, despite their constant efforts and dedication, we are still having some more and more reports for electronic banking frauds. So our paper actually wants to look at the key drivers for these electronic banking frauds in the South African context. So this is what we basically want to achieve with this paper when we did it. Then our research is very key, is very important for banks because it is going to present some, when we actually unearth the key drivers for electronic banking frauds, it will lead us to recommend some effective fraud prevention strategies, which will ultimately save in terms of financially the banks and also the clients, which are constantly losing their hard-earned money. Then in the academic fraternity, it is also going to contribute and also offer some insights on what are actually the primary drivers for electronic banking fraud. Then when we manage to achieve a reduced or fraud-free environment, it means our bank's reputation is going to be enhanced because the banking sector is actually more premised on reputation. Then it's also important strategically to the South African economy, where we are saying the banking sector is the pillar for the South African economic stability. Then we move on to, this is more like what I was also, when we were saying, who is this important, where we are saying to banks, the economy, to the policymakers, to the academia, to bank customers, and even to the South African Reserve Bank. So our main objectives was to examine the underlying factors contributing to electronic banking fraud prevalence in the South African banking sector. Another objective was also to investigate the underlying driving factor for sustained adoption of digital banking within the South African economy, and also ultimately to recommend the effective fraud mitigation tools, which are actually hinged on new technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and even the blockchain. So our research methodology was basically quantitative in nature, and our sample was actually driven from 5 banks operating in South Africa, where we deliberately, through purposive sampling, chose 15 risk officers to interview, where we also gathered our data through some structured interviews, which were conducted online. Then our data analysis was actually done through Master 24 software, which we used to analyze the data. Then finally, the findings were actually presented through tables and also some direct quotations, citing what was actually said by some of our respondents pertaining to the questions. Then our main findings, basically our study was informed by the fraud diamond theory, which actually give us the elements which influence one to commit fraud. But I need to mention this because this was done for more focus on occupational fraud, unlike electronic banking fraud, which is actually committed by someone who is not within the organization. So we took the elements and measured them to see if they are actually, they also obtain or on the electronic banking frauds. So our research actually confirmed that the key elements of the fraud diamond theory, which are opportunity, pressure, rationalization, and capacity, all of them, they were confirmed to be applicable to electronic banking fraud prevalence. Where we're saying opportunity, the opaqueness of the nature of digital transactions on its own actually presents the opportunity for electronic banking fraud prevalence. Then in terms of pressure, we are saying the financial pressures and also some economic vulnerabilities also expose or drive the fraudsters to actually commit fraud. The same as rationalization and the capacity, which is also being strengthened by the nature of electronic banking transactions. Then apart from the elements which from the fraud diamond theory elements, we also find some independent drivers, which includes the collision between bank employees and criminals was actually cited as also another driver. Then the over-reliance of digital services, where we are saying we are actually moving from the physical banking to digital banking, and that one on its own can actually expose banks and even its clients to electronic banking fraud. Then another important point is the adoption of new technologies. When we are saying when banks are actually adopting and implementing these new technologies, the respondents the feeling that they are not doing much research so as to make sure that their employees and also even their clients or to look at some of the risks which might come from adoption of such technologies. Then there's also another point, another driver, which is the insufficient real-time fraud mitigation tools, where we are saying we have some limited forensic expertise, those with investigative capacity, and those with the digital banking or the digital data extraction and handling skills. So this will also lead to some cases being lost on the courts because they will not be extracted and handled well, the information. So there's also the lack of education and also training for and awareness for both the bank customers and employees before the adoption was also cited as another driver. Then we move on to the governance and compliance challenges, where the respondent actually highlighted that there are some issues relating to governance and also some compliance issues. Then inadequate legal and regulatory frameworks, where they were actually feeling that though South Africa is one of the countries with some strong legal and regulatory frameworks, but in terms of electronic banking fraud, the responses actually feel that much is need to be done so as to make sure that the legal environment and also the regulatory frameworks are up to standard so as to combat digital banking frauds. Then the process flow inefficiencies in the judicial systems. So together with the budgeted constraints, where they were actually saying in general because we don't have some South African customized fraud defenses, which are backed by new technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence. The costs for those which we are actually adopting from developed countries is generally high. Then there's also another point which was actually highlighted, the scarcity of the fraud-related data, which might be used to train the models. And they were so explicit that though we have got the South African Banking Risk and Information Center, which was actually erected by the South African government so as to try to assist, there's still some scarcity of fraud data because banks, they do feel like if they disclose the fraud statistics, it's more like they are also telling the fraudsters their weaknesses. So, and also do have some operational gaps where they were citing that there's actually the absence of 24-hour human mind fraud support, and this actually lead to issues where there might be a gap where a report is made and where the client can actually be assisted. So from the key drivers, we come up with some recommendations where we recommended the South African banks to adopt the machine learning-based fraud mitigation tools, which actually is so scurvy in terms of identifying the patterns within the data so as to pick some fraudulent transactions. Then the comprehensive training for both staff and customers is very important. And also banks can actually do some targeted awareness campaigns addressing some emerging electronic banking fraud schemes so that the clients are well informed of what is actually taking place in the market. Then the deployment of the localized South African localized fraud mitigation solutions, which are specifically tailor-made for the South African banking sector, is also another recommendation we come up from this study. Then the establishment of the research department for all banks, where we are saying, though we do have some research departments currently, but they also need, before the adoption of any new technology, they must interrogate it in a way so as to come up with to see the risks which might be associated with the adoption of such technology. Then banks we also encouraged to retain some fraud experts by means of improving their remunerations and targets and the packages so as to attract them and also to retain them, because there was a feeling that most of the fraud experts are actually going for greener pastures to developed countries. Then the implementation of the 24-hour fraud support manned by human. And we also come up with some policy recommendations where we say there are some policy issues which actually need to be addressed, including the automation of some of the processes within the judicial system so as to address some inefficiencies. Then the centralized fraud mitigation, fraud information database, where we are saying this database must be actually be automated to report each and every fraud regularly. And then finally, in terms of our recommendation, the regular review and modernization of cyber crime policies, because this one is not a static thing. The more we adopt new technologies, the more where some gaps also come to our policy. So there's need for regular review of cybercrime and policies so as to catch up with what is evolving.
Doc, apologies, I didn't realize you can't see the chat, but you're out of time. I'm just going to give you one more minute to perhaps just conclude your conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. In this research, we do acknowledge some limitations, which involves the fact that our sample was only for 5 banks and 15 chief risk officers. Therefore, it might complicate the generalizability across broader banking sector, and also the fact that the study was actually cross-sectional. Then he proposed the research to address these gaps, which include more countries, might also lead to some better results. Then in summary, I think we found that actually electronic banking fraud in South Africa is actually on rise and presenting a growing challenge. And banks are actually being very vigilant in their efforts to implement countermeasures for fraud. And the components of the fraud diamond theory, along with some additional factors as discussed, were found to be key drivers. Then the adoption of some new technological backed solutions like machine learning, like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and also machine learning can actually helps a lot in combating fraud, electronic banking fraud in South Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doc, and well done to that paper. I have your certificates, both presenters, with me. I'm going to give it to your colleagues to maybe take it with and see you when possible. Josh, you'll have to get a digital certificate, but I would like to open for questions. We do have 3 people in the audience, and I just wanted to ask if anyone has any questions they would like to ask the presenters.
I have a question for Josh.
Oh, sure. If you wouldn't mind just moving a bit closer so Josh can hear you. Josh, if you could please listen, this is a question for you.
Yes, yeah.
Hi, Josh. This is Roseanne. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Well done on your excellent research and presentation. My question to you is maybe not directly linked, but just in general, How do you think we'd address situations where corporate policies that is usually written in terms of the westernized culture, how is that going to clash with local ethical expectations that are rooted in the values that you've discussed?
Thank you very much. That's a really, really strong question. I just want to see if there's any audience members online who would like to ask a question, and then I will give the panelists the opportunity to also answer. Any questions online? Okay. I have a question for you, Dr. Tawana. So I was very curious because I'm also in the compliance sector in South Africa, and we recently sat down with some of the financial institutions, and they expressed that they are specifically seeing a rise in sorts of online banking, and it's a concern because they are safeguarding from their side, but they feel like the customer, the end user, is not doing enough to sort of safeguard themselves in terms of fraudulent situations. And so I'm curious, we can definitely speak to the institutions, and they have a lot of financial resources to sort of create safeguardness, but how do we protect the end user? And do you then think then it's the institution's responsibility to be taking on that particular task? Cool. So Josh, let's start with you. Please give us your response.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay, you want that? Okay, am I starting?
Yes, please, Josh, if you could start us off, and then Doc, you'll come afterwards.
All right. There's a lot of corporate policy clashing with local parlance, local practice. Let me give you an example. So Western epistemology, your work time is 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday mostly. In some of the cultures in Africa, for example,
Sorry, Josh, we just lost you
down.
there. Can you still hear me? Oh, sorry. Could you
Yes,
just repeat your last sentence? You got cut off just a little bit.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. If you could just repeat your last sentence.
I was saying that, for example, the corporate policy, a westernized corporate policy of 9 to 5 may be at conflict with some African traditions where you start work at sunup and you're done at sundown, for example. So if you have a society where that is entrenched, where maybe work time is 6 to 5, but corporate policy in some companies maybe 9 to 5, 7:30 to 4, 7:30 to 5, you're already conflicting. I remember an example in one of the cities here in Nigeria, in Oyo. Oyo, that's the principal town in the old Oyo Empire, where the banks, you're supposed to work 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. But there were 3 days where they had a local festival, Oro Festival. That's the kind of masquerade at which time nobody's supposed to go out. And I think the 4th or 5th day, women don't come out at all. But then you have a corporate policy in all the banks. You must be at work at 7:30. That caused quite some friction years ago. And that's an example of corporate policy clashing with religious, cultural beliefs. So we have a lot of this across board. This study will look at, would also put a lot of them together across Nigeria and South Africa. What are the corporate policies clashing? The European, Euro-American policies clashing with local paradigms, and then how can we integrate our own epistemologies into rewriting or having a pluralism of sorts in local HR management, such that you don't have a wholesale adoption of Western thinking and philosophy. So we can have a hybrid, a pluriverse of sorts. I don't know if that answered your question.
So much.
Yes, it did, Josh. Thank you very, very much. That really does help. Doc, you can go ahead and answer the last question, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So, yes, I've actually highlighted South African banks. They are actually doing a lot to try to embrace or to try to combat electronic banking frauds, fraud in South Africa. But my answer to your question, where banks are now saying is the customers which are not doing enough in terms of to present themselves. Yes, it's partly correct, but my thinking is this must be a combined effort for both from the initiator or the creators of those algorithms, the banks, and finally the users. So there is much need for awareness and also the issues like education and training of those clients, because some of our clients as banks, I think you can agree with me that some of them that are not even literate enough, or they are not even tech savvy enough to know that if I do this, it might end me in trouble. So there is much need for awareness. I do acknowledge that South African banks, if you go on our websites and the like, they are trying a lot to conscientize the public. But remember, how many clients can have that literacy of going to some websites and trying to look what are the trending frauds which are actually taking place. So my answer to that one is one, there's need for combined effort from those who actually develop the technological tools, the banks, and also the end users. Thank you. I don't know if I answered you correctly.
Yes, that answers me very well. Thank you very much. Because yeah, I'm one of those people who get many SMSs about, please don't do this. This is a scam alert. But for someone like my grandparents, that doesn't mean much. So I understand when you say the problem there is creating various forms of awareness campaigns, and that will definitely help in terms of the end user's experience. Okay, thank you very much to both the presenters. So fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you want to see it, this is about the end of our panel discussion because only 2 of our presenters or papers were able to present for this. What's going to happen now is I'm going to keep this room open just in case someone comes in and they would like to still present. However, we do have an audience here, and if they would like to go to a different breakout room, please feel free to do so.
Bella.
Yes.
Hi, Bella. So I had a comment
Yes, Josh.
I had a comment on your on the last question and also his response. Because
Please go ahead.
I'm a practitioner in Nigeria. I manage a bank, and I think that under ethics of care, when you're talking ethics of care and fairness, the pendulum swings more on us, the banks, to provide the buffers and the security and to protect the customer. You just had to mention where you have your grandparents. I mean, how exposed are they to online activity? They are not netizens. I think there's a term for them at that age. I can't remember what the term is. So they are really exposed. People who are 56, 70 years and above, I can't remember what the term is, but they are more vulnerable to online phishing attacks and all that. So in Nigeria, what we've done is those are some of the engagements with even the regulator here to up the ante for the banks in terms of regulation that will put more like 80-90% of the responsibility on the financial institutions, because you have the infrastructure, you have the economies of scale that can be deployed to protect vulnerable customers across. But that's what I wanted to chip that in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Josh. And I think that answers the end of my question, which is what do banks do? Because they tend to have the more resources than the end user. And in that, Josh, if you don't mind, could you give me an example of what then a bank could be expected to do? So if you've already set up an app and you've already set up blockchains, what further can you do that sort of like exacerbates the protection for your end user? Do you have an example, perhaps?
Yeah, I do. First part of
Would you
it,
mind sharing?
yeah, you have access to a lot of the back-end activity, a back-end trajectory. Most time, fraud doesn't take place in isolation. You have a couple of things happening at the back end that you as a bank have access to the reports. Maybe an incident has happened in an area, and maybe to, for example, you have something common in Nigeria between 20 and 35-year-olds, maybe in Lagos, which is a commercial nerve center. With one or two isolated events, you can do policies or advise customers up north or everywhere across board. Even when you have, because you as a practitioner, you have asked, maybe you know what's happening in Absa Bank already or NetBank. They've had these incidents. You're able to take actions to protect your customers and also advise people in the industry. So those preparatory, there's a lot of information asymmetry, which will be at will not be good for the customer, which is why I was saying that the institutions have more of the work to do, because the information asymmetry concerning sharp practices and the entire industry actually favors the banks being able to take more action than the individual customers.
I appreciate that, Josh. I do have two
Sorry,
audience members.
Bella. Sorry,
Yes.
Bella. Sorry to
Hey,
interject.
Pauline, how are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was actually knocking at the door. I had to call Paul to let me in. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
okay. Thanks, Pauline. You came right in time. We were going to close the session, but it's perfectly fine. I would like to give you maybe the 10 minutes to present, and then we will take some questions if you don't mind about your presentation. Just want
Okay, no
to
problem.
check if you had your presentation and if you're able to share. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let me try to share. Good afternoon. I don't know what time is there. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Afternoon.
Yeah, I
afternoon.
don't know. Let me just try. I'm used to Moodle, not to
All right.
Moodle, but now I'm struggling with Zoom. Let me share.
All
Okay.
right. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a green icon that says share, and that's how you essentially should be able to share. But just ensure that your presentation is already open.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
I don't know if you can see
Great.
my presentation.
You are definitely sharing. It's just taking a little bit of time to load. So just give us a minute and then we'll let you know when it's up. Ah, yes, it is up. You're welcome to start when you're ready. I'll give you 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues, fellow panelists and presenters. Thank you, Chair. I will not, because the first presenter spoke about the bank, in the field of the bank, I do not have a particular field. Mine is an organization. So my topic today, I'm from, let me just share, because I'm struggling here.
So you're currently sharing, you just need to put it on present mode. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's three little icons. There's one that looks like a page, and then there's one that looks like a flip chart.
Let me just,
Alternatively, I think you're at the very end of your presentation, so maybe just click on your first slide.
okay, let me just move up. Where
Yeah,
do I
if you could
find
just
it?
click. So just firstly, just click on your first slide. So slide 1. Yep. And then at the very bottom, you'll see that there's an icon that looks like a flip chart. You can press that and it will put you into presentation mode.
Chat.
The last one next to it. On your,
Is it this one?
okay. No. Just go back. No. Yes, the one that looks like a flip chart. So it read venue, the next one. No. Okay. Okay, that's fine. This
No,
is
can
fine. This
Paul
works
help?
quite well.
Because then I'm going to struggle. I don't know if Paul is there to help.
No, that's okay. So essentially only you can change it into presentation mode, but it's fine. We can see it. You can carry on.
Okay, good afternoon,
Yeah.
colleagues. I'm from the Durban University of Technology. I'm Pauline. I'm in the field of human resource management.
Yes, is everything okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I'm in the field of human resource management. My topic today is, let me go back, is on, I can't even see my, let me just move here because is on Ubuntu Inspire Ethical Human Resource Management. What inspired me, what motivated me to go to actually look into this particular topic, because being in the field of HR, most of the practices, the implementation of the practices of HR are adopted from Western part of the world. So we assume that indigenous knowledge of African can add value to the management of people. So I decided to actually venture to try to actually go through the literature to see how can the knowledge, the African knowledge, indigenous knowledge and philosophy can actually add value, and how in organizations. I'm really struggling with Moodle.
All right. Just at the bottom, there's little arrows that you can press to move through your slides.
The thing is that I don't even see the arrow. I only see my, I don't see any arrow here, which is...
Okay. You're on the second slide, so whatever you did, you can just carry on doing that and it will move your
Yeah, let
slides.
me just move because the screen here. Okay, I can see now. Okay, got it.
Yes, can you?
Good.
That's perfect. Cool.
Okay, the content, I'm going to look at the overview of Ubuntu philosophy in the context of HRM. How can we define or view the concept of Ubuntu? How can it add value? And the purpose, the aim of the research, like I mentioned in the beginning, is actually to probe what is going on in the literature. And then the research methodology, the literature review processes, and then we'll highlight the gaps and directions for future research, and then the implications. How do we understand Ubuntu? Ubuntu is an African philosophy, mostly in the southern part of Africa. I think it originated somewhere in the southern part of Africa. The word Ubuntu, that means I am because we are. That emphasizes collective well-being, rational ethics, and shared responsibility. That interconnectedness among people. The community, assuming that when people are together, they help each other. And now in the context of HR, the core value of Ubuntu is compassion, fostering empathy and understanding among people, honesty, integrity, respect of each other, because we assume that everyone is human, and then it's mostly people-centeredness. In the context of HR, unlike the Western HRM model that often focus on individual performance and practices, Ubuntu Inspire HRM champion a collective, rational approach to build inclusive organizational culture and ethical leadership. When we talked of honesty, compassion, we talked of people that are have integrity, and then ethical leaders. And then if you look at the tree here, as African, for those who know, the baobab tree is actually a very huge tree. It's a very huge tree. Is some African culture call it the tree of life. It symbolizes resilience, community, whereby in a typical African village where people want to talk, they discuss what is happening, they will sit under the tree, they will discuss, they will share whatever they have to share under that particular tree. It's actually a huge tree that is very useful from the root up to the fruit. It bears fruit, and those fruit are actually very, very nutritious. And then the baobab trees here embodies the Ubuntu inspired HRM model, whereby you can see on the roots are very strong. And then the roots here, you have values like human dignity, the respect for human beings, the mutual care, that sense of community among people, among employees, collective success. Instead of competition, they actually strive to succeed together, and that interconnectedness. And then in the trunk of the tree, those are some of the HRM practices. And how can those HRM practices actually embodies or apply to that particular Ubuntu philosophy? You have the recruitment. Usually when we go for recruitment process, we are looking at the skills of particular applicant, the skills, the experience, but the Ubuntu philosophy will go beyond the skills to look at if the particular individual have that particular sense of community. Someone who can, who's
Doc, I just want to let
open-minded.
you know that you have 4 minutes left.
Open-minded. And then you have the branches. I'll go quickly. The branches bear fruit, and the fruit, like I said, they are very nutritious. In organizations, when you have that connectiveness, that sense of Ubuntu, you'll have people, trust, resilience, innovations, and well-being. And those particular results or fruits will actually help the organizational growth. And then in the base, we can see diverse people sitting under the tree. And then the purpose is to examine, to actually see what is happening. How can Ubuntu influence HRM practices? And then in order to do so, I conducted a systematic literature review following the methodology of Prisma, whereby the initial search in the different search engines like Scopus, Web Science, Google Scholar, Science Direct, and so forth. And then the screening process to remove the duplications. And then based on the criteria, inclusion and exclusion criteria, we actually proceed to quality assessment. I'm going to rush now because I have a few minutes. And then the search yielded to 953 publications. After removing the duplications, we are left with 419 publications. And then based on the selection criteria, 89 were eligible for how do you call it, to scrutinize. And then later on, I had 24 studies. And then you can see the charts here. The publication were from the selection was from 2015 to 2025. And then in 2015, they had 1, 2019, 5, 2020, we can see here, see that there's a progression. There's actually a progression, quite a lot of research from 2019 to 2021, and then it went down from 2023 to 2024 and pick up again in 2025. And then in those particular studies, see that their impact, the leadership is a key factors to make sure that there is this nurturing of employees in organizations. Suggestion of a foster ethical leadership grounded in compassion, encourage share responsibilities, decision making where everyone, employee have to be involved in the decision making. They have to have a say in whatever they are doing, and then the center should be on people.
Doc, may I ask that you perhaps move to your results? You have 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. And then the gap, we have empirical gaps. There are very few studies, and then insufficient analysis on Ubuntu. And then it might not work for hybrid framework. And then direction for future research. That means need of more research to investigate in the different organizations, and then to validate the framework and ensure authentic applications of the principle or the philosophy of Ubuntu. And then it comes with challenges. Like I said, most of the HRM practices are from the Western region. So they were adopted. So Ubuntu, the application of Ubuntu will come with challenges. How to balance Ubuntu with Western HR model in the application of recruitment, selections, and performance management. And then the leadership, because we have different hierarchy, different leadership style in organizations. Autocratic leadership might not approve that shared value, openness, and so forth. And then cultural diversity. Nowadays, the organizations are diverse. We have people coming all over the world, how to implement this particular African philosophy, and then resistant to change. It has to be, organizational culture has to change, and we know that people do not like change. And then, like I said in the previous slides, it's going to be difficult to implement it in the remote digital world. I'm almost there. Then the conclusion, the implementation for success factor. You need junior commitment, organization commitment from leadership to employees to actually implement it. The adoption, Ubuntu had to be adapting Ubuntu principle to a specific local cultural realities and social economic condition to ensure relevance and effectiveness. And then you need a robust system to prevent superficial adoptions of the philosophy. And then in conclusion, overall, there is significant potential of Ubuntu inspire ethical HRM to transform organizations. Because when it was found in many studies that were investigated that implementing the philosophy or the approach of Ubuntu will actually enhance social cohesion, enhance employee engagement, and then foster organizational trust. Those are some of the references. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Doc. I apologize. It's just sorting out an admin thing, but thank you very, very much We do have another presenter who also spoke very much about that discussion. So I maybe want to open for the online presence first if they have any questions, and then I'll take questions from the audience sitting down. Online, any questions?
Yes. Do I qualify as online?
Yes, you do, Josh. Go ahead. Yes, you do.
All right, Doc.
Go
Doc,
ahead, please.
welcome. Doc, welcome and well done. I do wish you were there when I was taking my presentation, because what you're doing with Ubuntu, I'm using Ubuntu, and its Nigerian cousin is called Agbajawo in Yoruba land. So I just wanted to ask questions on your methodology. What's the research philosophy used? And then in terms of the core methods, how you gather the information, interviews, uh, who are you reaching, who are you asking questions from? Are you doing ethnography? I mean, so what are the methods? But first with the research philosophy, worldview, and then the methods.
No, the philosophy, the research worldview is more empirical to review what others have said about Ubuntu. I must say that this is a new approach. It's not a new, but it's a transformative approach. It's not yet, if I may say, implemented in organization. There are aspects of Ubuntu there and there, but it's not fully implemented. So this is a transformative approach to propose. So I'm not interviewing people for this particular research. What I did, it was a desktop research where I went through the article to review what people have said. That's why I talked of systematic literature review.
Okay.
I don't know if that
Sorry,
answers the
Josh, did
question.
you have, a further follow-up after that?
Yeah, I heard that.
Or you may have suggestion to improve, Doc?
Oh, yeah. No, so my question, I didn't get, I think I was a little off at the beginning of this presentation. Is it a proposal? Is it a work in progress? But I think you said it's like a desk. What kind of work is it? I missed that because how will you form now what you want to do with the
So it's a
outcome?
work in progress. It's not yet fully completed. It's a work in progress. Yeah,
I
the
think
management haven't been
we should do the work.
completed.
We should do the work in progress together because we're doing similar things across different spheres in Africa. But it's really interesting, and I think, as you have said, the vesting of epistemological superiority on Western thought in HRM practice in HR, we should kick against it. My one is from the decolonial aspect of it, using the decolonial theory to oppose wholesale adoption of Euro-American practices in HRM strategy in the global south, especially Africa. So it was good to hear that you're still at desk review. I was thinking, well, you need to find out, for example, how these HR practices, these Western HR practices have impacted people in terms of maybe interviews, panel discussions, interviewing employees of multinationals or some of the companies. I don't know where you're basing it from. Some ethnography to see how it has embedded and how we can have suggestions in operationalizing, for example, Ubuntu-inspired HRM in policy and organizational restructuring and management. My comments.
Yeah, thank you very much for the suggestion. That will be another aspect to actually look into. Like I said, it's a work in progress. Want to see what is happening in organizations, what people have said related to Ubuntu philosophy, how can it contribute now? The step ahead the step forward will be to actually go to the field and ask people about. But we know, I might not have the statistics here. We know that many people, many employees are not happy with regard to the way performance management is implemented in some organization, the recruitment selection, the recruitment process, there are biases, all those kind of things. We know, but I didn't prepare the statistics here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that discussion. That's also quite helpful in understanding, I think, a little bit about the topic and how it is manifesting in various area codes and especially with different research methodologies. I'd like to open to the floor. Would anyone like to ask any questions on the floor? Yes, would you mind just moving a bit closer so that the audience can hear you as well? So we do have a question. Please just give them a minute to come into the front and they will ask.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you move a bit closer? Go ahead, you can go.
Okay, thank you, Pauline, for a lovely presentation. I just have a very minor question, which is in the model that you have of the Ubuntu tree. In the roots, one of the roots is collective success. So I was just wondering, would this really be placed as the root, or would it be one of the outcomes? In which case, would it not be among the fruits? I mean, I'm just asking.
No, what you see in the root are all those principles that the Ubuntu actually advocate for. And then on the
Now,
list,
may I ask maybe that you put the slide on so we can just look at it while you're both discussing this
the thing is
question?
that I'm actually lost now. So I don't know. I'm trying to join. Maybe I should share again. I'm trying to join.
No, we can see your slide.
We can see it.
If you
Okay.
just
move up.
scroll up and then we will see
Yeah.
the particular slide you want. So just keep pressing up.
Up.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go. Okay,
Great.
go ahead.
Like I was saying, if you look at the root here, mutual care, human dignities, collective success, interconnectiveness, those are actually the principles, all those
Ubuntu.
values, if I may put it, that the values that the Ubuntu advocate for. Those are the values. And the fruits,
Yes. So
the outcome will be job satisfaction, that is not there, the well-being, resilience, trust, and so forth.
Do you want to move a bit closer so that you can hear we have a follow-up.
Yes, I understand you. I'm just wondering if, for example, would you express it as collective success, like it's already been achieved? Or would you express it as an interest in collective success? And it doesn't have to be those words,
No,
but something that
collective
indicates.
collective success here is not the success of an organization per se. You see, collective success here, among people in organization, they actually advocate that community, that sense of collectiveness. They succeed together. They succeed together.
Okay.
They actually
Okay.
help
Yes.
each other so that they move together.
Okay, Susan is asking, do you want to call in? Okay, to help me. Thank you.
Okay, just give us a minute though. We will have to move a
You
bit
can
closer.
actually suggest, because this is, like I
Yeah.
said, a work in progress. Yeah, you can suggest. But if you look at the values of Ubuntu, the philosophy, those are the values on the bottom. Those are the values.
Yes, yes. So we're
The
with you.
outcome will be in the leaves. You know, the fruits.
So I think the reason I'm asking is about how to communicate to the audience that is going to use your research in the end. So I'm just wondering if we're not used to seeing success as an outcome rather than, so that's why I'm wondering, is there any other phrase to explain the same thing? Yeah. Because if success is already at the beginning, at the roots of the thing, then it's less believable.
Okay.
Because what people want is the success as the outcome of the strategy that they're adopting, the outcome of the framework. But then this framework looks like we already have success at the root. But I understand what you're saying, that Ubuntu is interested in collective success. Ubuntu advocates collective success. But what you have here is not advocacy, is the success. Yes. Anyway, so it's to think about. It's not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your input.
You're welcome.
Yes, Susan, did you want to add?
No. So I was just trying to support what Doc was saying concerning this collective success thing. And I was saying, because if you are looking at the roots, you are taking from there and then it's processing, then it is evident in the leaves, which is the outcome. Yes. So maybe then we could say maybe collaboration or maybe collective inputs or community or something of that sort, something that shows that it is from the individual to, a group of people or everybody bringing in their input. And what that happens is it's like when you're cooking. Different ingredients come together and then you have that
dish
sound.
is successful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I see Doctor's point, which is Kemi's
Thank you
point.
very much. Thank you very much.
And then you
for
have
the
mutual
input.
care twice. Is there something that we have missed instead?
No, I missed that one. That was the mistake. Sorry.
Okay, so it's just once. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well done and all the best.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Quite an interesting application as well. I think because also we heard from Josh that a predominant number of these corporations are also formed in the West. It's very interesting how this would be playing out in terms of HR processes and the reapplication of this perspective in terms of how we treat human beings within corporations. But it is quite interesting research, and we wish you the best of luck. If there are no more questions, I don't see any hands here. I don't see any hands online. This was our last presentation. We did have 2 other presentations earlier on. Oh, Namdi. Oh, Namdi. Hi. Namdi.
Hello.
Hello. Namdi, I'm just checking if you've already presented.
No, I have not.
I don't think so. Okay, cool. So Namdi, thank you so much, Doc, for pointing that out. Namdi, can I maybe ask that you also prepare yourself to present? I can give you 10 minutes to run through your presentation before we take a round of questions.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's
Cool.
fine.
All right, if you could, please set up your presentation from your side and then you can share screen when you're ready.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. You can start when you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
Afternoon.
I have so short a time to make this presentation. 10 minutes is quite a short time, but I believe I will touch on some key points that
Okay,
will,
you can have 15, but
that
that's
will
as
elicit,
much as I'm
that
willing
will
to go.
that will elicit some discussions that will also help
Cool.
the research. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to discuss ethics of reskilling, corporate responsibility for workers displaced by automation and outsourcing. Pardon me, I want to save my internet, so maybe I should just show my face once and then before I start, so that at least hold on. I should have shown my face before sharing. Okay.
We unfortunately cannot see you as yet. I'll let you know when we
Yes,
see.
yes.
Yes. Hello,
You can see me.
Namdi. How
Good
are you?
afternoon. Hi. Hi.
Yes, we see you.
I'm from Nigeria,
Hi.
presenting from Lagos. Sorry,
Oh,
I
so
cannot
it's
physically present, so I have to do it from here.
of
Okay,
course,
having
no
seen my face,
worries. It's okay.
let me just save my internet and then be able to get back to my. If you are seeing my screen, please confirm.
Yes, we can see it. You can go ahead.
Okay. Ethics of reskilling, corporate responsibility for workers displaced by automation and outsourcing. My name is Nnamdi Nwokwe. Now, a quick through the agenda, introduction, literature review, ethical frameworks, case studies, and synthesis and discussion conclusion. as a word of introduction, I mean, we have had the fourth industrial revolution, which has brought about so many benefits, yet it has its own perils. Of course, it's been driven by terms like AI, robotics, Internet of Things, automation. And some of the promises we have had enhanced productivity and efficiency. We have had creation of new markets and opportunities. We have had solutions to very complex global challenges. But again, it brought with it mass job displacement. And I mean, as far back as 2020, it was projected that 85 million jobs will be lost by 2025. I've not laid my hand on any empirical data on what has been done so far, but in the last 2 weeks, we have had an announcement by Nestle laying off 16,000 workforce, all tied to automation, due to automation that they intend to embark on. Amazon joined and said they're laying off 14,000 workers, again, due to automation. And now that people are getting more used and more proficient in the use of AI, a lot of automation will come in and so many jobs will be displaced. So what we see here is what I call a systemic inequality. Gains are concentrated around the businesses, while losses are borne by the vulnerable workers, leading to job polarization. It's worse for us in Africa because here in Nigeria, about 63% of the youths are unemployed. In fact, it's even much more when you consider the informal sector, 85.8%. Now, what's the real dilemma here? Corporations reap significant profits from automation and outsourcing strategies, yet they just externalize the social and human costs of the displacement by having workers unemployed, and then that social cost goes to the public. This creates a fundamental ethical dilemma regarding accountability and responsibility. So my research questions are, 1, do corporations have a moral obligation to reskill workers they displace, particularly in regions like Africa with weak regulatory and social safety frameworks? Again, I'll be asking, is investing in reskilling a fundamental part of a firm's fiduciary duty to its stakeholders, not just to its shareholders? Are we is this part of a fiduciary duty, responsibility of companies to do this? And do they even have a moral obligation to reskill their workers who are faced with displacement due to automation and outsourcing? And my argument is this. I mean, corporate responsibility for reskilling is not just an act of charity, but a binding ethical obligation. I also will argue that this obligation is grounded in multiple robust normative ethical framework. So this is like a normative study combined with case study, evidence of case study, economic benefits arising from some cases. I couldn't take so much, just 3 of them, okay? I'll be looking at the ethical frameworks from 4 ethical theories: the stakeholder theory, the distributive justice, the deontological ethics, and the utilitarianism. Furthermore, this ethical imperative is collaborated by economic rationality, which is from the case studies, showing that there is even an economic justification. Now, looking at the literature review, we'll look at corporate social responsibility. Of course, the world was wild with Friedman's shareholder primacy in 1970, when he postulated that the sole social responsibility of business is to increase its profit. Further said that he provides a justification for cost cutting via automation and layoff without residual responsibility. So anybody who is solely focused and practicing Friedman's postulations will assume that there's no problem. However, Friedman in 1984 came up with a major shift where he said there should be a shift in corporate accountability. Firms have the obligations to all entities that affect or are affected by its actions. Here we're talking of both employees, the communities in which they operate, their suppliers, and so forth. And it should just not be the shareholders. Because shareholders alone cannot account for the operations or for the profit or for the sustainability of that business. Now, Aquinas and Glavas now more or less framed a modern CSR where it said that, and it said that they have an ethical obligation beyond legal compliance, and it involves proactively mitigating the negative impacts of business operations such as job displacements through initiatives like retraining. Now, looking at the ethical framework themselves, the four that I mentioned, starting with the stakeholder theory, of course, which creates a justification of what I am proposing, I am postulating as it were. And we do know that the stakeholder theory core principle is that corporations have fiduciary duties and a duty of fairness to all stakeholders. Those who contribute to the firm have a legitimate claim to consideration in decisions that affect them. How does it apply to reskilling? Employees are vital stakeholders. They bake the bread, they produce the goods, okay? Displacing them without support to boost shareholder returns violates stakeholder justice. Also neglecting reskilling externalizes cost, because when automation happens or jobs are outsourced, those who leave the job become like external cost to the environment, to the society, as it were. Okay, so it's a failure of the firm's duty to operate fairly for the benefit of all constituencies. So in conclusion, I would say under this stakeholder theory, to say reskilling is a non-negotiable obligation arising from the very nature of the corporation as a social entity. Now, distributive justice further creates the justification for this. And of course, we know that the philosopher here is John Rawls, 1971. And what's the core principle? Social and economic inequalities are only just if they are both to the greatest benefit of the least advantaged members of the society. And then if attached to offices and positions are open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunities. Now, how does it apply to my position? Automation creates vast inequalities. Reskilling is a mechanism to ensure these inequalities also benefit the displaced workers. So by reskilling their workers, they are creating that fairness and justice, which the distributive justice portends. Now, concentrating gains among executives and shareholders while discarding workers really fails this ethical principle, okay, framework. It ensures a fair distribution of the benefits and burdens of technological progress. Yes, you can go ahead and automate, you can go ahead to get more profit, but also do consider that it has its own consequences, effects on the employees. In conclusion, under this framework, I argue that reskilling is a matter of fairness and justice, not just corporate policy. The third framework that supports my position is the deontology ethics. Of course, we know that the major philosopher here is Immanuel Kant, 1785. Here we usually refer to it as a categorical imperative. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end in themselves. Human beings are not means to an end. They are not only good when it concerns profit. They are not only good when you want to start a business and you want to sustain their business. You should consider that they are also an end in themselves. How does it apply here? Employees possess inherent dignity and are not merely instruments for profit. Using workers and then discarding them when automation becomes cheaper treats them as disposable means to an end, violating their humanity. Firms have a duty of care to mitigate harm to employees, a duty that exists regardless of the financial cost-benefit analysis. In conclusion, I will still state that reskilling is a moral duty required by respect for persons independent of the consequences. And finally, I bring up the utilitarianism. And of course, we know that the major philosophers here are Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Here, it states that the morality of an action is determined by its consequence in maximizing overall happiness or welfare. Again, you could rephrase it the other way, in minimizing overall suffering, okay? And how does it relate to reskilling? I will look at it from two perspectives. From a layoff perspective, it creates concentrated suffering for displaced workers and their communities, potentially leading to long-term social instability. The net utility may be negative. From the other perspective of reskilling, it now involves short-term costs, but leads to re-employment, sustained consumer spending, social stability, and a more skilled workforce. This maximizes the long-term societal welfare. So on both sides, you see that this framework really supports that firms should really go about reskilling their staff who have the potential of being displaced by automation and outsourcing. Empirical evidence shows reskilling reduces unemployment spikes and improves aggregate welfare. This was done Shen and Zhang 2024. Now, in conclusion, again, from a utilitarian perspective, reskilling is ethically mandatory because it produces the best overall outcomes for the society. Whether you're looking at it from the layoff perspective, or looking at it from the reskilling perspective, it brings about the best. Now, I took time to just go through. I had so many case studies, but I just limited myself to just 3. First one was
May I
Amazon.
ask that you perhaps limit yourself to just one? You have 5 minutes left. Sorry.
Okay, let me put up this. Okay. Amazon in 2020 started this 700 million commitment to reskill 100,000 US employees, 1/3 of its workforce for high demand roles. Okay. And a portfolio included training, okay, Amazon Technical Academy training, software development, machine learning, and then career choice funding, college, and AWS, which is a cloud computing training. What were the economic and social impacts? Participants in technical roles saw a 93% average salary increase. The Associate 2 Tech program achieved an 80% transition rate from warehouse to IT roles. They transited, 80% of them transited from warehouse roles to IT roles, reducing turnover and recruitment cost. Because so many of them had to also work for Amazon, okay? They were skilled, they worked for Amazon, and they were also available for other companies. The social effect was that programs like this democratize access to education and skilled careers for frontline workers, fostering greater social equity. This one happened in Africa. About 49 countries were involved, but it was being coordinated from 3 countries, Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana, I think. And then the effect was super. I mean, developers' wages rose from $3 per hour to as much as $30 per hour. And of course, these youths that were being skilled in technology were available to really even support the new trend of AI and the rest. Because of time, let me just move on to my synthesis analysis. So the case studies provide compelling evidence that reskilling is strategically beneficial, leading to reduced turnover and recruitment costs, a more skilled, adaptable, and loyal workforce, enhance also corporate reputation and social license to operate. Again, there are counter arguments. They say it's too expensive. But again, we have seen in the long run, yes, the initial cash outflow might be high, But in the long run, the return on investment is quite good and really supports economic viability. There's also the comment that trained employees will leave. Well, they might leave, but they're also going to work somewhere within the society, which even within that entire ecosystem, whether it's a cluster, whether it's a network, has some extended benefits to everybody around. If nothing else, reducing the number of thieves on the road will make the risk aspect of robbery and thievery and all that stuff to be quite reduced. Again, some people say it's a government job. Yes, it's government job, but government cannot do everything. Government cannot take care of everything. And that's why, as part of this paper, I propose a public-private partnership, a collaborative model, so as to be able to tackle this because the scale is quite high. Scale is quite high. In conclusion, really, the convergence of ethical imperatives from the 4 major frameworks that I discussed and business case evidence makes a powerful argument for corporate-led reskilling. It's not just a moral duty, it's a strategic necessity, especially in this period of AI. What do I recommend? We should institutionalize reskilling. To integrate it into core CSR and strategic HR planning, aligned with future skills demand, especially demands around AI, cloud computing. There are so many coming up. We should forge public-private partnership. Government should not be made to do it alone. Government can also offer tax incentives. Corporations should co-fund sector-wide initiatives. For us in Africa, we should, the multinationals in Africa should do much more. Let me not speak much more. Include employees in decision-making, because if employees are included in decision-making, they might even come out with better ways of reducing the real negative consequences of automation and outsourcing. We also need to measure and report, develop standardized metrics, wage growth, post-training for transparency and accountability. Study limitations, is a qualitative analysis, so we need, it cannot be statistically generalizable. I selected 3 cases. Yes, there is a bias in what case to select. I did not do, the study did not do a longitudinal data analysis, so that might be one of the opportunities for future research, even having to do a comparative cross-sectoral analysis. And then also developing a PP model that could really help to do this. These are some of the references. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much and well done. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take some questions for you. Just in the audience in person, do we have any questions? Any questions, Doc? None? All right, thank you. Online, are there any questions? Any questions? Okay, I have a question if you do not mind, Namdi, just to hear my question. So in the beginning of your presentation, I know you made statistical highlights about the unemployment rate for youth in Nigeria, and you specifically also then talk about how is it even larger if you want to measure things like the informal sector. So I have 2 questions. One, in institutions, well, in instances where we do not have formalized companies hiring people, how are we to engage the situation of reskilling? So particularly people in small to medium businesses or perhaps in their own entrepreneurial businesses, how do they deal with issues of rapid change in technology and therefore needing to reskill themselves, given that your paper largely speaks about the responsibilities that corporations have? Now, if we have smaller organizations like SMEs and entrepreneurs, how do we address that particular obligation they have? And then secondly, when speaking speaking to corporations, sometimes they do want to initiate the idea of reskilling. However, the fear, particularly when it comes to AI, is how fast the technology is moving, that even if we want to invest initially and we're willing to take the initial cost, it is happening so fast that we would need to invest in any case 6 months later, because that's how fast the technology moves. So how would you then say we address issues of the rapidness that skills are lost because of the rapidness that technology is developing? And then I think Josh has a question. Josh, do you want to ask a question? And then Namdi, you're welcome to respond to everyone.
Yes, please.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Josh, please.
Okay, so my thoughts, asking also want to know more. I'm looking at the title, corporate responsibility. So corporates are responsible for reskilling, and it's not an act of charity, but a binding ethical obligation. I'm going to ask you, says who? Because you spoke about the shareholder primacy, which is a natural inclination for firms. And then we're now saying, okay, it's a duty, it's an obligation. I mean, so you need to clarify that, says who, what's the support literature behind this. Then if you look at also employees involved in this process and the decision making, you need to think about the social exchange theory and think of reciprocity, even when you're thinking of perceived fairness. So the organization should has a duty under deontological ethics to set up reskilling for their employees. However, how have the employees uh, behaved in the firm? Is this going to be thrown up to all the employees? Or are we going to say, okay, loyal, serious, engaged employees, or disenchanted, disconnected employees? Are you throwing the net open? So think about that in terms of the social exchange theories and workplace relationships. So reciprocity, it's both ways. So we need to understand how you're thinking of this reskilling in terms of this. And also, again, the first question says who? Why?
All right, thank you very much, Josh. Namdi, please go ahead.
Okay, on the smaller companies, first and foremost, my paper, I'm trying to show the fact that we have issues here. We have issues with changes coming very fast. And then why companies are taking the benefits, they're externalizing the costs. And they're externalizing the cost to people who joined, who before the introduction, before all this advent of technology and automation, were the bread and butter of what they had. So they gave you everything, and there is transition, and you're taking advantage of the transition, and then you're leaving them dry. It pertains in all of this. I'm not saying I have the silver bullet, but I'm saying here is the gamut of the problem. Everybody is shouting AI, AI. Some don't understand. Some are running away from it, and it's having its own consequences. It has automation. Automation is moving very fast. And so companies are taking the bull and saying, I lay off 400,000, I lay off 4 million people off because I want to take advantage of automation. What then happens to the 4 million? Just because you're trying to take an advantage of this. So first, to the smaller companies, I know that there are interactions and relationships that happen within clusters, within networks. A small organization might not be able to handle it by itself alone. So there must be some kind of collaboration along, whether on a vertical or horizontal lines, to come together and then be able to tackle this. Yes, it's much easier for the multinationals to do that, but very difficult for the smaller companies. And so for SMEs, I think means of clusters and some kind of networking, they will be able to achieve that. Okay. Yes, initial cost is, you said initial cost will be high. Yes, initial costs, I did mention that in my presentation, will be high. So the usual problem will be cash flow issues. But again, if you look at the way investments are being evaluated, it's not a short term, it's not a short-term run. We are looking at the long term. The long term, the the cases that I presented, even much more that I did not present, show that the return on investment is good, okay, in the long run. Yes, initial outlay might be problematic, and that's where also collaboration with government agencies or government PPP arrangements will really suffice, because they can always bring the cash flow, and then over time, everybody benefits, both the society and the company. Supporting literature. Well, I am trying to make that case. Okay, Josh, I am making the case. I might be the lone voice. Okay, that's why my methodology in making the case is first to say there are ethical principles for which we know. I mean, we have had this conference and so many governance policies and governance structure have adopted ethical frameworks. Okay. If for instance, a company has adopted these 4 ethical frameworks, as it were, which governs their policies and the way their culture, the way they do things, and their governance structure, then they should not see any problem with reskilling their staffs that will be affected by automation. So is a position I'm trying to posit, okay? That's the gap that exists if I decide to talk about gap that exists, which I'm trying to bring to bear. And I think I've tried to make a very strong case. And if I had more time, I can add more cases to say, from a moral perspective, yes, you have it. Ethically, we have those support, but even looking at it from economic justification, we have seen cases where there were economic justification. So let's not just say we are looking at it only from an ethical principle. There is also value from the economic aspect. Yes, I like the aspect of social exchange theory that you mentioned, reciprocity. Again, I would take a look at it, but the first thing I want to mention is that we are not talking of disengaged staff here. Every organization has a right to say, okay, you are not doing well, not because of introduction of AI. You are performing, you are not performing. These are normal performance appraisal things that happen, and then everybody follows the policy that they have. But if you are having to displace somebody or displace employees because you are transiting to automation, which gives you more profit than what you currently have, you're already getting X profit. That's fine. You want to do X plus Y profit. Fine. It's all within your purview. We're not saying you shouldn't do it. Go ahead to get X plus Y. But there are consequences of that X plus Y. The people that have been giving you the X over time will now be displaced and now become cost, external cost to the society. And we are saying, look at it again. If you are guided by the frameworks that I mentioned, the ethical frameworks that I mentioned, you can as well do something. Do something to reduce the negative consequences. Again, if you are not bound by the ethical frameworks, of course, you will not see any gain in it. The only gain you will see is the economic justification that I raised, which might not be so appealing. But if you combine the ethical framework plus the economic impact, I think that gives enough justification for organizations to look at it. It's not strictly a give and take issue, no. They have their different processes and structures for give and take, who we staff to stay, but when staff have to be disengaged because of automation. And if you go back to reading the news brief coming from Nestle and coming from Amazon, they stated it clearly. It is due to automation that we are laying off 16,000 people, not because of any other thing. Not because they're inefficient, not because they're not working well. No, it's because we're taking advantage of automation and we're having to lay them. Because when we take advantage of automation, we need to lay them off so that we'll just be nimble and be more efficient. So, but again, I will look at it. I'm taking down the notes on the social exchange theory, and then I will see how I will update my research work.
Thank you very much, Namdi, and I appreciate how receptive you are to some of the feedback. I wish you the best of luck in this lonely pool. I think the paper is quite interesting and your approach is quite interesting. So I hope more voices take charge in the specific perspective that you're trying to look at. But thank you very much for your presentation. It was really well done. And I thank you for the questions as well from the online audience. And in general, thank you to all the panelists for very interesting presentations. It all sounds very new. It all sounds like it's new perspectives to research, new perspective to problems that seem to be reoccurring in our current society. So in general, as researchers, I wish you the best of luck in that pursuit. And yeah, thank you very, very much. We can close the call now because I do think we do not have any other presenters. But otherwise, have a good day and we will see you tomorrow for the second day of the conference. Best of luck. Thank you.
Now, Bella, I'm just checking to see if I can close the session. I see you have wrapped up most of the details.
Hi, Paul. Yes, you can close the session. I thought I would keep it open just in case someone shows up, but no one has showed up in the past 5 minutes. So you can
That's
close
fine.
it if you want.
Yeah, if they do look at the link and it doesn't work, we'll have my email address to send me an email as well. So we'll be able to get them from there. But well done. Thank you very much for everything in the background. I think it went quite well. Small group, but I think it went well. How many people did you have on site there?
I eventually had 3 people in the room, and they are the
Yeah.
supervisors of the presenters. So it was quite a great discussion because I think they were genuinely giving feedback about the papers.
Okay. No, that's super
Yeah.
because people have been all over the place. They've been moving here, left, right, and center, all over the place. In the
Yeah.
background. No, that's
Yeah, the
great.
beauty of online.
Yeah, that is good. Excellent. Thanks very much,
Thanks,
Bella.
Paul.
Super.
Good.
Okay.